Well, let's do it live on a Monday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Bo. He is the great Z. How you living, buddy?
I'm doing well, brother. I'm doing well. It's beautiful to see the sun, to know that we got a great week of weather coming our way. So I'm doing great. Had a nice holiday weekend, and got to spend some time, obviously, with the family. We took in, it's unbelievable that we're in the same place, but took in the Guards opening day, home opener, which was a lot of fun, albeit in frigid temperatures, quite cold. But it ended up being being a great time. So yeah, it's been a great weekend.
How'd they do? They win?
They did not. They did not. I think they lost Friday, Saturday, but then won yesterday in extra innings.
Okay. Yeah, I'm finding it very difficult. It's been a couple of years now since I've been out of the baseball game, and I'm finding it very difficult to re-engage. My kids aren't playing it. It's not part of my habit anymore in terms of checking on things.
Yeah.
So I just, I'm aware that it's ongoing and that type of stuff. But in terms of paying attention to it day to day, it's just not there for me.
In your other worlds, is there not much? Is it more of a Reds town, or is there just not much baseball zest?
Oh, there's zero demand.
Got it.
None. Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, like if one of them it's definitely more of a Guardians town than a Reds. But even if you were, it's one of those things where like if one of them makes a run in September, then it's something you'll pay attention to Tuesday through Thursday.
Yeah.
But not on the weekends, not with the football. So it's just not. It's not something that rates. Quite frankly, I mean, you pay attention to those things, and it's just not something that rates from a. Well,
it's a long grind too. It's like April, and then it's not going to really come to manifest till September or October.
You really have to. I think if you're going to be in a market that wants to do baseball on the radio, you really have to set the agenda, like the beginning of even in the lead up to the season. You have to talk about the storylines of it, and you have to view everything. We always talk about with tranches. Remember that?
Oh, yeah,
the 4-game tranches.
Yep.
You love a tranche.
Love a tranche.
And that's really how you have to talk about baseball. You have to talk about it in these 10-game stanza, what has happened. And you do the same thing with NHL and probably NBA, except even in NBA, you do have these one-off games that feel like really big measuring stick games.
Yep.
Baseball, I think you probably have measuring stick series. But it's a really hard talk daily. Because even in the case of a series, you can't make a big deal about something that happens on the first one. You can make a big deal about what happens on the third. If it's a sweep or something like that, then maybe you have a little bit of juice to it. But it's just it's difficult. I suppose if you're in Boston or St. Louis or something like that, then that's New York. That's different, obviously, in those markets. But for the rest of it, it's tough go of it. But listen, I'm for it. I love a Saturday night at the ballpark. I grew up with it. I think it's great. It's just as my kids have phased out of it, so too has my kind of attention paying to it. I did pay a great deal of attention to the golf over the weekend.
So did I. Oh, baby.
Really interesting, very interesting weekend because of the weather, right? And so, like, you were stuck with this archaic television thing on Saturday where you could not watch it live, and yet they recorded it for live. But it wasn't on broadcast. You could have watched like what they did on Masters.com, but you couldn't watch like the Saturday stuff in real time live when it was going on, which is still amazing to me. You had these two trees fell. I cannot believe no one was killed. I just can't believe it.
Stunning. I mean, that was
crazy.
Crushed. Insane. Those are monsters. Those are monstrous.
And it's right. What was it?
17? Yeah.
I mean, amazing. That somehow that didn't happen. It's pretty remarkable that you had 85-degree temps on Thursday down there, and then they played in the upper 40s, low 50s over the weekend. Absolutely crazy. I was a little disappointed that we didn't get a little bit more of a duel on Sunday. I still enjoyed it, but I was hopeful that we would get a little bit closer of a match on the back nine.
Brooks is cooked, dude. Mentally. It just felt like it. It also felt like had the weather not happened, he was cruising and he was in a great spot. And you wonder if, having to stop and restart the round, and then he comes out cold in the morning, goes 2 over in the morning portion, and all of a sudden wasn't it like 13 and he was at 13, Rom was at 9 maybe?
Yes,
and
I think you have that right.
I
remembered at 13 and 9
to 11 to 9. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like he had no idea where he was hitting the ball at all. He just looked
especially
lifeless.
with irons.
Yeah. And off the tee.
Yeah.
I mean, his tee balls were not great.
Yeah.
And Rahm is good. I mean, Rahm ho-hummed it, and you felt like it could have even been better. He missed a couple of putts he normally doesn't, and ho-hummed it to 69 in the final group on Sunday at Augusta. I mean, you got to tip your cap to him. He ran away with it. That was the bummer. At one point, it looked like you had, 10 people within 4 shots of the lead, and then it just evaporated. I mean, the fact that Mickelson at 8 ended up tied for second was wild.
Yeah, I'll get back to that in a second. So there's a point I wanted to make on that. It feels to me a little bit like Rahm has reached a point where certainly nowhere near like the Tiger and all of that, but it feels to me like he's almost to me like where Spieth was maybe 5 years ago, where Koepka was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where it's like if they're in a major, it's a pretty safe bet. Like they're going to be in the mix. Rahm over the last 2 years, if it's a major, he'll be around. He's going to be in the top 10. He's going to be good. He's going to be a contender. I liked him going into the week. That's not reinventing the wheel. I think a lot of people probably liked him going into the week. He's probably one of the pre-tournament favorites. Of course, he should be.
Is he like number 1 or 2 in the world? I mean, he's
just he's a bit of a. Him and Scheffler have gone back and forth. It just feels like he's kind of a machine right now. Like his blow-ups aren't blow you off the road blow-ups. They're manageable, and he's going to be in the mix on a lot of these things.
And he 4-putted 1.
Yeah.
4-putted.
With the great Zach Ertz story.
One. Zach Ertz was incredible. The story was great. Never again, Zach Ertz. Text him that one green looks like what did he say, like a walk in the park or a piece of cake, and he goes out and 4-putts it. That also meant that on that particular day in round 1, he played the next 17 holes 9 under.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about the fact that his 9 under for those 17 holes was better than anybody else did over 72 holes, is kind of amazing.
Yes, very much is. A couple of other observations. You mentioned Phil. I think it was borderline criminal the way they covered it.
Agreed.
And I love CBS. I love Nance. I love the Masters. I don't know who made the decision not to act like this wasn't a big deal for a 52-year-old man to shoot 65 and to put an 8 under on the board.
Finished in second.
He finished in second place. Like he put a 68 on the board or 65 on the board. He shot 8 under. There was no match, no post-round interview. I don't know if that was his choice or theirs. With Augusta, you're never going to get all the details. Who knows? But that was stunning to me. The fact that it wasn't covered more. Didn't he hit 16 out of 16 greens in regulation?
He was on fire. And yes, they finally, it felt like, acquiesced to the fact that they had to show him hit some shots because he was cruising without even being featured on TV. And in fact, it felt like Koepka wasn't being shown, even though he was the leader as much as Rahm.
So to me, that had to be an Augusta National decision, not a CBS decision, because CBS is not doing anything editorially without Augusta National's approval.
Yeah.
So to me, it felt like Augusta said, if you can minimize this, do it.
And by the way, I don't recall seeing much, if any, Dustin Johnson at all. And I definitely, what was the guy's name who won the Open? Cam Smith? I didn't see any of him
I didn't see once
at all.
No. And even Patrick Reed, it was a couple of shots as he got it to 7 or 8.
That was it, though.
Three LIV guys finished in the top 6. And I think one big thing that has happened in that sport is there are diehard people that follow that LIV PGA thing very closely, and golf media covers it very, very closely.
Yeah.
And I think golf media can't wait for the LIV thing to fail or hopes that it does fail or hopes that these players fail. I think all of that's very, very real. But I think you have to remember, when you're talking about the Masters, the Open, the U.S. Open, when you're talking about these things, I don't think it's an overestimation to say that half of your audience is not diehard golf, especially the Masters. Half of your audience is casual sports fan. It's people who are aware that golf is going on, but might not even be aware that there are 2 tours, let alone 2 tours where they cannot compete on the same.
Right.
There's been multiple tours for a long time. There's been a European tour. There's all sorts of other tours. But in terms of you can only play on one, I'm guessing that a lot of people aren't even aware of that who watched, or certainly not, that watched on Sunday of a Masters, where you're talking about probably half the audience is casual sports fans, or casual golf fans, I'm sorry. I think they made a mistake by making it a little bit too much of all of it.
Agreed, and to your point, it just feels right. Like most people, and I don't even know if most people care. Now, I feel like the golfers themselves kind of care. It feels like
Some, yeah.
some don't. But like I'm excited for that Live PGA event. If that actually is a real thing, that match play, if that ever happens someday, I'm interested in that. That I think will be very fun to watch. But it's guys who wanted to go get guaranteed money, work less, and make more. Now, it was interesting, that it felt like now Mickelson made a nice charge at the end, but Brooks is the main Live guy that was in it, right?
Yeah.
You wonder if you're out there playing in shorts and it feels like you're kind of playing these wonky team events and scrambles where it really doesn't matter how well you do, right? You're just out there making your money anyway.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's hard all of a sudden you're playing the most pressure golf you've played in a long time. Like it's easy when you're back as far as Phil was because there is no pressure.
Yeah, you're just.
But for Brooks Koepka,
free.
there was pressure, and you wonder, number one is, it felt like he went to the Live Tour because of, maybe his lack of confidence in himself after he had done that, where he won the 4 majors in 2 years. And he was just like, I'll take the guaranteed money, and maybe that'll relax me. Yeah. And it seemed like it did. But then, clearly, under the pressure of this, he was not himself. I mean, he chipped one that didn't even get on the green on 12. And I realized it was a delicate chip, and he was trying to just trickle it on and all that. But, I mean, let's go.
I think that all of those points are valid. I just think that a decent majority of the audience had no clue about any of it.
I think
that's very little clue
I think that's
about
fair.
any of it. And so if everything that you're talking about probably should have been talked about on the broadcast to explain that. Because if you're just watching, like I was with my wife and kids on Sunday, like for sure, like the boys had no clue about Live PGA. They're not watching the Greater Hartford Open, right? They watch the majors. They'll watch the Memorial Tournament. They'll watch the ones they're familiar with because I watch them. Those are the ones they're into. They're not watching week in and week out. I doubt they even know that the Live thing exists or that it's different. So that type of stuff should have been explained a little bit more. And you have to understand that your audience is not as aware as everybody who's at Augusta National is.
Yep, agreed.
And that I thought was a bit of a failure because if you just watch that, what they produced was not indicative of what was happening at the golf course.
Correct.
So I thought that to me, I thought they made a little bit of a mistake there. The other thing a couple other things, it's remarkable to me. Augusta's power still. The fact that we mentioned the no live TV on Saturday, even though there was obviously an audience for it, they said, no, you can't have it. I love the notion that that for winning this thing, you get just a oddly colored green jacket that a bunch of other people have that are walking around there. Like that's so coveted. It's amazing they've pulled that off. Like I thought about just getting one in that color and just wearing it to dinner and seeing what the reaction would be.
Be
I
great.
just wore it around.
Yeah, with gold
Wouldn't it be great?
The buttons and everything.
The whole thing.
So apparently you can't, like they are, I was reading an article it was either Golf Magazine or Golf Digest about it, and they basically have people who scour the internet, eBay, everywhere, if somebody's trying to sell like a
knockoff.
Yeah, and they are all over it. Like there are
I'm sure
none.
they are. Cease and desist everywhere, but they don't own the color. Like there's a Pantone for the color. So you could have one made
in the color, but then it's the buttons have the logo
Sure.
in gold on the buttons. There's a lot of little details that you wouldn't have, but I mean, how many people know that? I only know because I just read this article and I've been watching the Masters for years.
I also thought it was amazing that you'd be hard-pressed to argue that Jim Nantz isn't the voice of golf and has been for 30 years.
Yes.
He's as capable an interviewer as you're going to find. And who does the first interview with the winner? Who asks the first question? Not Jim Nantz. Old boy Ridley gets the first question.
Because that's Augusta,
Amazing.
man.
They do what they want. It's amazing.
Yep, they do what they want. I thought it was wild, though. And it's funny for like a half a second. You're like, oh, man, on 18, where does tee shot go? He's hitting a provisional. Even if he bogeyed it from there, it still was going to be – he still was going to win. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no way – there was no drama at the end, which would have sucked. I wish Koepka could have been within a shot
Well,
or
if he had
two
lost
going
his
into
tee
18.
shot and Koepka birdied, it's feasible that he could have made a 5 on his second ball, which would have been a 7, and then it could have been. But I mean, Koepka was the thought of him making birdie was laughable.
Yeah, I do think also that I didn't understand the provisional ball perspective when the ball was clearly easily found at the bottom of the hill.
It was as if they didn't realize that at first.
How's that possible? Those greens, there's not a leaf on one of those fairways or greens.
Yeah,
how could you not have seen it? There's 100,000 people around that fairway and green. How could somebody have not said, "Oh, it's right there where they're going to walk in 10 minutes"?
Did Nance ask him? So I saw a meme, and I don't know if it was real or not. But did Nance ask him what was going through his mind when his drive didn't make the fairway?
I did not hear that in the postgame.
All right, it was like a meme, and he goes, "I was just thinking about what my app was going to be on the Champions Dinner next year," which I thought was funny. And I knew Rahm didn't say that, but
no.
Yeah, there just was no drama, and it felt like there should have been. I mean, it just was
all there.
It was a very disappointing performance by Koepka. I mean, really. I mean, that's just
yes.
And Hovland,
he was the only one who could chase him down.
Hovland was there though. Hovland was at 8.
I think Hovland was undone by Cantlay's play.
Cantlay being so bad.
No, so slow.
So slow.
Did you see him like? Cantlay was taking forever to hit the ball out of the fairway, and Hovland just started walking up to the green. Like, he was like, enough. I can't take this anymore. Just walk. I think he was undone by it. And Koepka and Rahm both were staring at Cantlay on 16 as he was sitting on the green, taking like 10 minutes to hit a putt.
I think it affected.
The round was 4 hours and 50 minutes.
Yeah.
I think it affected Koepka.
I think it affected
bigly,
Koepka. Yep.
Because he plays fast, notoriously plays fast, and Cantlay's one of the slowest. By the way, probably the most strange cross-section of sponsorships I've ever seen on a golfer, Patrick Cantlay. So he had a Goldman Sachs hat.
Yeah.
He had Delta on the quarter zip, and he had a DeWalt bag. Power Tools Airlines Bank. Like, what's that cross-section?
He's like, show me the money. That's what he said.
That lets one person end up with those 3 entities.
Yeah.
None of these are related.
No, not related at all.
Wild.
Unless you need the
one
tools
other thing
to fix
came
a
out of
plane.
Yeah, well, that's true. One other thing came out of it. Did you see the Jason Day about why Tiger withdrew from the PGA last year?
No.
Said it yesterday post-round that the reason Tiger pulled out of the PGA last season was one of the screws in his knee, surgically repaired knee, pierced through the skin while he was playing.
I don't think we will ever understand fully how devastating the injuries to his leg were and what a triumph it is that he's even able to play 18 holes. I mean, clearly could not walk yesterday and withdrew yesterday, but couldn't. I mean, it was tough to watch. It was tough to watch.
Yes.
And that accident, obviously, he was able to come back. He wins in 19. The accident was what, in 21?
21. It was right around COVID. It was 20.
20.
I think it was 20.
And obviously,
it was one of the last events before COVID.
Obviously,
like February of 20.
He was in a bad way at the time and bad place mentally and was medicated and all of that. But I don't think people really can understand, because you can see one swing and be like, oh, wow, he's still Tiger.
Sure.
I don't, and he won't do it. But, I really think the only way that he could ever compete again, if he can, or finish a tournament really, is with a cart.
Yeah, and his caddy said that. He said if he had a cart, he could win this. But without a cart, he can't, and they're just never going to acquiesce to that, and he wouldn't want to do it, I don't think, anyway.
I don't remember where he stood on the Casey. Remember Casey Martin, who was his teammate at Stanford?
Yeah.
And I don't remember where he was on that, if he was sympathetic towards it. But listen, it is a business, though, Bo, and business is better when Tiger Woods is playing and in contention. So
no question.
Him in a cart, I think, and I don't know that any players would have a problem with it. It almost felt to me like Justin Thomas bogeyed to let him into the weekend.
Somebody else had said that he wondered if Thomas bogeyed to let him in on the weekend, which tied the record for consecutive cuts at the Masters. I had saw
and
that
they're boys
this weekend too. Yeah, they're very tight. Yeah, very, very tight. Could be. I don't care if it didn't. Good for Justin Thomas for doing that. I mean, it's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't make any difference to me.
No.
You tell me, as a guy who's actually played a lot of competitive golf, walking versus riding, are you that passionate about it?
No. I think I like to walk. It definitely can, especially place that hilly when he's got a leg injury. The truth is, as long as everybody's doing the same thing, it doesn't matter. You still have to hit the shots. I also think, though, I'm also a person in golf. You got to hit the shots. You got to execute. So whether he's driving around in a cart because he can't walk. So if everything was equal, everybody should do the same thing. But in this case, it's clearly not equal. His ability to compete on that level is not equal. So if you put him in a cart and it gives him a chance to compete, I personally, all for it. I don't know that I'm sure there'd be a lot of people that would complain, but I don't see why you wouldn't want him to be more involved than he can be currently, and knowing that really the only thing that's separating him from that ability is a golf cart. I mean, it's Tiger Woods. You know, it's amazing. I don't know if you watched, I think it was late on Sunday when they showed the opening tee-off shots, and I'm sure they probably showed it a few other times.
With Jack and those guys, Jack and Gary Player and Tom Watson,
And, you know, Gary Player still all blacks, slugs one out there. Jack with like a crazy-looking pink shaft, but like that's Jack Nicklaus. And when he hit that ball, and he must have hit it decent, I mean, the way he put his hands up was such a classic old man move, and I'm like, this guy's just pumped he can still kind of hit it out there, and this was the best golfer in the world. So everybody's time comes, but to me it's unfortunate that for Tiger's situation, and you could say, well, it was in some ways self-inflicted, right? That it's – I don't know who would have a problem with it. And maybe people would say, I don't want Tiger Woods beating me. But if like Tiger Woods can still go out there and play and win under those auspices, I'm for it. I'd be fine with him having a cart. I think it's more fun when he's playing than when he's not.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you, just from someone who enjoys consuming this type of stuff, and just make it to where anybody who wants to use one can. Like if you want to. I don't know how many guys would actually choose to do it or not. It'd be a lot of sitting and waiting versus walking. I'm sure the routine, if you're a competitive player, would be better to walk and to keep laser focused. But yeah, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. We're so lucky to have had 19 with him. Now that you see how it all played out, because
and that was miraculous.
To think about from 08 to 19, you've got that one. It's like the guy had 14 majors and he's won one in 15 years.
Yeah.
So and he was still very much at his prime, you know, when all this stuff happened with all the injuries and then all the personal stuff. So, I thought it was, you know, it's good to see it again. It was a crazy Masters in terms of the weather swings to it. And again, I would also say this, like, it's one of those things, like, I'm thinking of this as Jon Rahm is putting on the green jacket. Like, he's in like a red shirt, which of course was famous for Tiger, of course, but like, does not go with green in any way.
And it was almost even, it was whatever shade would be between a red and a salmon, right? Like,
yeah, it was a different shade for sure.
Yeah.
Like, it almost feels like you have to, if you're in the final couple of pairings at the Masters,
wear white.
You have to think like, what's going to go with green?
White or
like
yellow?
White, light blue,
yeah,
black.
Sure.
There's a few that do. Even Spieth, I think, always looked good. He always has the blue on Sundays. That's very doable. But you don't want to be in that red. And the other thing I thought, and you always keep a close crop on the dome there, but I think about, like, if I wore a cap all day and then took it off and have to put on the jacket with it off, like, the hair's going to be a debacle.
Yeah.
Like, you saw Rahm trying to fluff his up.
Oh yeah.
Because it was under a hat all day. Look, the hair's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
How do you're not getting a shower in after that thing. Absolutely great.
Yeah.
It was great. I wish we could have. I think we were robbed a little of the competitiveness down the stretch, but
totally, it was nothing to see. There's nothing to see here. Yeah.
It got the boys fired up. They were wanting to hit. We went and hit at the simulator on Saturday, and they were playing around the yard.
Let's get them out there this week.
Yesterday. They were all jacked up. Now they got lacrosse and hoops and everything else. But for one weekend, we had a little bit of freedom. They were able to play a little golf, and that was fun to see. We will get to the OBJ thing in just a second. One thing here before we set sail here on the first segment, the Beast is now available. Our guy Dane Brugler's manifesto when it comes to the draft. Go to theathletic.com and download your copy of that today. Honestly, this year with the Beast, probably if you're someone who's dialed in and really wanting to know what's going to happen with some of these guys who we pick in the third round, this is your best opportunity to do that.
Yep.
Because this is deep. These are deep cuts now when you're talking about 2 third-rounders. You're not picking 11th overall. You're picking deep into the draft. So, like, in terms of who gets drafted, it's very likely, and as close as you and I follow this stuff, it's very likely, probably, don't you think it's 50% likely that we will not have heard of one of the 2 guys we pick in the 3rd round?
Well, once we read the Beast, we'll have heard of him. But yes, I would.
No,
say
no,
that,
like right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean and I do a lot of college
especially
football,
if it's
and
not a
there's decent
receiver.
chance.
And now all of a
If
sudden,
it's not in
everybody's saying
it's
this
not in a
receiver
Power
class.
5.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and it's not a receiver. Who knows?
who knows? Right. I mean, we were talking, wasn't it? We did Seattle the other day, and they have 5 of the top 50 picks, and we don't pick until 74. And then again, I think 98 or some around that ballpark.
Pretty hard to wrap your head around them having 5 picks in the first 50, and we won't have.
They could
one
get.
until
They're
70.
sneaky. They are a sneaky football team to me. They could be pretty good in a hurry.
If you believe in Geno Smith, they could be really good right now, and if you don't, they're a quarterback away.
What I mean is, if Geno Smith plays
He
approximately
runs it back.
to what he did a year ago,
Yeah.
and you get to add 5 very talented pieces around that, or 4 and a quarterback, I think that you're going to be in a pretty good spot there.
Well, they got Bobby Wagner back to add
Yep.
stability at the linebacker spot. He was a second-team All-Pro last year again. They had what did they draft in
And they
last year's
drafted
draft?
great.
4.
Yeah,
Last
Wolin
year's
was
draft,
like
they had
5th
drafted
round.
4 starters.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 4 starters, both tackles, safety. It's crazy. And then Walker.
Yeah. Kenneth
Both
Walker.
tackles, the safety, and Walker, all in last year's draft. So
Yeah.
they stack another one like that, they can go in a very, very big hurry in the NFC. All right, coming up next, as you no doubt have heard, Odell Beckham Jr. has a new team. It is in the division. What does it mean for the Ravens? What does it mean for Odell? What does it mean for the AFC North? Among the things we will get to is a little free agent conversation with you as well. What is our team of the day? Is it the Lions? Do we have the Lions today?
Yeah, DLD,
Tim
baby.
Twentyman joining us. That'll be
Yes.
fun. DLD, back in the days. We
Gonna
go
be
old
great.
school, back to our old studios for that. So we'll do a little. They're one of the up-and-comers. We'll get to that in the 2 o'clock hour as well. We're off and running here on a Monday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Cleveland Browns Daily brought to you by Ballybet. Coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Well, I got to tell you,
You're up, Zeke.
surprised at the money on this Odell Beckham Jr. deal, man. It's a one-year deal with Baltimore. It's a deal that will pay him $15 million guaranteed in the 1 year. 13.8 comes in the form of a signing bonus, so they're 1.165 in base salary, upwards of 18 with incentives. There's a lot to unpack here with Odell, and obviously him and Todd would have worked together 1 year here. Todd Monken, who's the new offensive coordinator in Baltimore. So there's some little bit of continuity for him from that side of things. But the thing that I think is, I guess what's most interesting to you, that he got $15 million guaranteed, or that he signed with the Ravens without a known quarterback?
As I've said all along, I think Lamar Jackson's either playing for the Ravens or he's not playing.
Yeah.
And my guess is this is a move to try to make him want to play with the Ravens. And the way that the contract was structured, it's all signing bonus and only a base salary of like $1 million. Mm-hmm. I'm stunned that he got $15 million guaranteed from somebody. Floored, flummoxed. In 2019, he averaged 64 yards a game, 74 catches, 1,035, and 4 touchdowns. He has not reached 1,100 yards in a season since 2016. He has not exceeded 6 touchdowns in a season since 2016. His best year since then was 77, 1,052, 6 touchdowns in 2018, which was with the Giants. Receivers don't tend to flourish in Baltimore. You know, in 2020, 7 games, 23, 3, 19, and 3. The next year with both Cleveland and the Rams. And even with the Rams, he averaged 38 yards a game. He just caught 5 touchdowns. 5 of his 27 catches were touchdowns, 11 yards a catch. He's being paid like he is potentially a number 1 receiver, which I don't know that you can say that. I love Odell. I'm excited we'll get to see him. I'm excited to say hi to him. I hope that he is excellent for them because I like him as a guy. I hope that, he doesn't help them too much, but it's a surprising number. I thought there's no way he would get more than maybe 10. None.
Okay. So agreed. I thought 8.
Yeah.
I didn't think there's any way he'd be sitting at 15. So that part is pretty stunning to me that he's going to get $15 million out of this deal. That's stunning.
Yeah.
Based on 2016 is a long time ago.
Yeah.
At this point. It's been a long time. So from that perspective, I'm surprised he got it. I understand why he got it, because $15 million is $15 million. And that's a nice chunk of change for him. Odell, as we know, and I loved him when he was here. I know you did as well. I think a lot of our players loved him.
Yep.
I know he's loved in the community, and rightfully so. Odell's lifestyle is bigly.
Yep. Yeah.
Really. So you think from the standpoint of you need to get as much and he can probably feel his football mortality. So I'm saying all of this to say I don't think he was caring too much who's going to throw him the ball.
Yep.
I think he was caring about how can I get the most cash that I can get right now, because I'm done with the prime of my earning career. That's in the past, man. So I've got to cash as big a checks as I can cash when I can cash them. And I think that's pretty straightforward in terms of that. I don't think there's any correlation from Odell's perspective of signing with the Ravens having anything to do with Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
I think they offered me the most, I took the most. The end.
Agreed. I do think that they're trying to utilize that as part of their selling point to Lamar Jackson, right?
I said from Odell's perspective.
Right. No, I agree. I'm saying
from the Ravens' perspective,
yes.
You nailed it. They are going to say, we signed Odell for you. And that is something we remember how popular Odell was here in the room.
Yep.
We remember upon signing him that he had more social media followers than everyone else in the NFL by twofold. Second place was Brady, and he had, at the time when we signed him, he had the most 2 times more than anybody else. Brady was second at that time. I'm sure he's not anymore. I'm sure it's Mahomes at this point now. But at that time, that's what it was. He is ultra popular among NFL players. My guess is Lamar Jackson thinks he's a righteous dude.
Yep.
So I think that you like that. I think that there is absolutely, from Baltimore's perspective, this will buoy our chances to make Lamar happy and allow for him to come home. I also think, Z, and I'm curious what you think about this as someone who studies a lot more tape than me. We've known, with Lamar, what Lamar is really good at is break pocket, find somebody sitting in a zone, hit him between the numbers and let him go, or throwing the go route.
Yep.
What he's not great at is deep over the middle, into windows, in and out of windows. That's not his strength. Odell does the first really well. Better than he does the latter, quite frankly.
Yep.
So from a football perspective, I think it makes some sense. Not at that number necessarily, but in terms of him getting the most out of it and Lamar liking it, I think there's some sense to be made with it.
I think what's going to be interesting to see is, getting down to it is Odell, averaged 11 yards a catch with the Rams. Can he run by people anymore? I mean, this is twice surgically repaired ACL.
No.
So
he's 30.
He's 30. Can he run by people anymore? And if the answer to that is no, then he becomes it's funny. I'm with what you're saying, and I do think he'll be able to find some soft spots, but he's still probably at his best in an offense that's going to give him more man opportunities to create his separation and kind of freelance. Now, Lamar can buy time so that when he breaks open, but I'll be curious to see how that fit works, and then also how that fit works when, Mark Andrews is still going to be the top target. Mm-hmm. And this is even if they have Lamar. Odell probably will be number 2. You got Bateman as well, who was their first-round pick that they obviously, I think, would like to be successful, and then they're going to run the ball a ton. From a football standpoint, I find it to be it's an interesting fit because, and I think you're right, from Odell's standpoint, I don't know if there's a little bit, hey, it's cool to be in this division, but I don't think I think it's just they were willing to give me what I was asking.
The most.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not the best football place for him in any way, shape, or form. And you'll say people, and I said, ideally what I would advise is take a lesser deal with Kansas City, ball out, win at a high level, catch a bunch of passes from Patrick Mahomes, and try to turn that into money on the other end. But I'm not the guy who's had to rehab my knees twice.
Right.
How many more finish the season years does he have?
I don't know. I mean, look, I want nothing. Again, we love Odell. I want nothing but success for Odell Beckham. But it's just, to me, it feels, I think they overpaid to get him there to try to appease Lamar Jackson. I don't know that it's necessarily a great fit in terms of what he's going to do on the field. I mean, I don't know, the notion that he's going to have 1,000 yards or something like that, I think to me if he does that, wow, is what I would say.
Yeah, I think you're thinking more like, 700 yards. 7 touchdowns would be like the ceiling, and 7 is a lot from a touchdown perspective. He has not made a Pro Bowl since 2016.
Right.
For perspective. And he actually had the one good year here with Monken in 19. 74 for 1,035. 14 yards a catch.
4 touchdowns?
Yeah, with the 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Now it was 133 targets to get there.
Yeah, his catch rate has been under 50% 5 years in a row, which that makes it tough to rack up big numbers as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Boy, him and Jarvis are both 30. Jarvis 713, 778, 70 on career yards. So 713 for 7780. Odell is 531 for 7367.
Yeah, and Jarvis had a rough year last year, right?
Really? Yeah, right. Yeah. Career touchdowns 56 for Odell, just 38 for Jarvis.
Man.
Yeah, I don't know where Jarvis is. I mean, Jarvis got hurt, man. He's
Yeah.
our guy, but he got hurt.
Love him.
It's hard to overcome. Here's the synopsis of this. Good for him. Way more money than I ever thought he would get. I don't necessarily think it means anything in regards to Odell Beckham or Lamar or him knowing that Lamar was coming back. I do think that Baltimore absolutely will play this up to Lamar as a reason to come back and for them to be acrimony between them and him. And I think it might. I think it could have real value there. But, buddy, I see no way that this is any sort of needle mover in the AFC North because I thought Lamar was coming back anyway.
No, agreed. I totally agree with that. He will make some plays for them. I think he'll make some, obviously, highlight catches. That's what he does. But, yeah, it's just hard to see a situation where he is going to be, a needle mover, as you said, into the sense that he fundamentally changes the way that they operate as an offense. He puts up 1,000 yards. He changes. Yeah. I'm curious if he changes the Lamar dynamic. The righteous dude part of it I think is important. But if they're not willing to pay him what he wants, I don't know that he cares. And if he's really mad at him, he's going to be like, you guys just gave $15 million and don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
No, if he's opening a spite store, this just adds another level to the spite.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, and I didn't watch as closely when he was here versus the time when he was in the Rams, but it did seem like, when he was here that he would want to – I think the injury stuff is real. Like he would catch it a lot of times, just get down.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd see him try to make a couple misses. If he didn't, then he would just get out of bounds. Like, you could feel your football mortality. It was real. Yeah. You could feel that when he was here. You're not as reckless abandon as you were at 23.
No,
it's human nature.
And he's coming back from an entire year off.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's kind of like, Josh Gordon kept coming back and he's going to be great again and he's going to be great again. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. You're chasing the magic dragon, but it's a hard thing to land that plane as Odell certainly was for Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon was more of, in some ways, a physical freak than Odell was. Odell, incredibly special, yes. But you're right. I mean, it's been since 2016. That is a long, long time ago.
It's 2 catastrophic knee injuries, let alone the years.
Yep.
So it's a lot going on. All right, coming up next, although I'm happy for him. Glad he got the $15 million. Good job. Coming up next, we'll take a look at some of the best free agents still available. Do any of them make sense for us? Here's a Cliff Notes version. No,
probably
I don't believe
not.
that they do. Not at these numbers. Certainly, we'll get into that coming up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Why are people driving?
You're up, Zeke.
Sure, and your Cleveland Browns, they'll be your favorite four-legged companion. Barking Backers, presented by Milk-Bone. Barking Backers, your newest club for Browns pets parents worldwide. Sign up today at barkingbackers.com. Barking Backers, a fan club for dogs. CBS Sport with the top remaining offensive position free agents. Didn't I do it? I hit the wrong ones.
Not yet, baby.
Now we're good.
There you are.
Yeah. I guess I keep thinking that Kareem would have been signed by now, but he's also not. Neither he nor Zeke are signed. None of these guys check boxes for us.
Not for us. No. The guy that would
The only
make sense for us at running back would be like a Jerick McKinnon, who you could get cheap. He can absolutely play on third downs. He can pass protect for your quarterback and can catch the ball very effectively and plays well in a spread style offense, which we'll run more of this year.
Is there anybody on this list offensively? I mean, if I think of like us still being involved in free agents, it would be D-line.
Yeah, there's nobody offensively I would think of that you would be looking at. Yeah, to me it certainly would be somebody on the defensive side of the ball if that's how you were looking at it.
If we're going to add somebody else who isn't currently on this roster who's not going to come via trade, to me it would be waiting until later in the summer, right before camp, even during camp, a veteran on the defensive line who maybe didn't want to do all the offseason, that type of a situation, to me, makes more sense than us signing anybody from either side of the ball at this juncture in the offseason. I think it's all into the draft now, and you'll revisit this stuff by the time you get to camp or just right before.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that you're in a pretty good spot right now. You know, barring an injury to somebody on the offensive line, you're pretty good there. You'll probably add, maybe in the draft or somebody to be a backup, but you probably feel pretty good about what you've got on that side of the ball. And yes, to me, anything that's happening is going to happen on the defensive line. If we're or a versatile safety that you think could be your, third safety in this group.
Yeah. Are you surprised Kareem hasn't signed anywhere yet?
Depends on
Not
what he's
much
asking
market.
for. Physical backs like that, it feels like when they start to decline, perhaps they do. And it felt like last year he just did not have the juice that he had in years previous. So,
yeah,
it was a tough season for him, obviously. I still think that he is very, very good. But he's looking at a part-time role. I think 2 years ago, you would have said, okay, when Kareem's out of here, after the 2020 season, you'd say, oh, he's going to go be somebody's starter and be a top 10 back. Clearly, that's not what the league thinks. And then the other part of it is this is such a great running back draft that you could say, I think I can get somebody who can produce on that same level, close to that same level, relatively there, and have them be on a rookie contract for 4 years.
Yeah.
So I think it's tough for these guys. I think it's tough for Zeke. I think it's going to be tough for Leonard Fournette. It's going to be tough for, Kareem Hunt. These are guys with tread on their tires who are clearly not the dominant players they once were. So what does that mean? How does that look when it's all said and done? That's the question.
And Zeke and Fournette, kind of the example of this is, top 10 picks at running back, and both still shy of their 30th birthday. And what do you have to stand for?
People think
it's a tough spot.
Robinson, how do you say his first name? Is it Bijan? Bijan Robinson is as good a running back prospect as there has been in the draft in a long time, like better than Saquon, better than all those guys. And a lot of the mocks have him going in the 20s, or if not in the first round at all, because it's just, you don't do that. Go back to it. The Cowboys could have taken in that spot Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah.
Like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think the only spot I could see for Robinson is Philly, because they have two, and for them, they're so ready-made, and they put an explosive. He could be the difference for them winning the title next year, like that type of explosive performer. But that's just because they have everything else.
Yeah.
And the way they play, too. I mean, their style fits him specifically in terms of that. Like, you put him next to Jalen Hurts in the backfield, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Trying to decide. And they're viewing it from they would be, I'm not saying I'd give him a second contract, but I'm saying a 2 to 5 year window of let's go right now and go win it. He could be the type that puts you over the top based on how they play offense. But you don't need it if you're one of these teams who spins it. You don't need a guy like that.
Right.
in any way. In fact, they might be the only team that I would take him in the first round with. Everybody else, maybe the Bills, because you feel like you're right there, but it's a short list.
Yeah.
We'll continue our team-by-team look of the NFL offseason. We're in Detroit. Tim Twentyman going to join us on that coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
It's time to play your best
Cleveland Browns Daily brought to you by Ballybet. Coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Elk & Elk Serious Lawyers, Serious Injuries. Call 1-800-ELK Ohio for a free case review. Elk & Elk's proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. We continue our team-by-team look of the NFL.
You're up, Zeke.
We are in the NFC North. We are on the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it Twisted Cleveland. Covering the Lions, Tim Twentyman joining us, Lions senior writer and insider, host of the Twentyman in the Huddle podcast, and he joins us now. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time. You know, it's interesting. You look around this division, you say to yourself, if not the Lions, then who? And if not, when? How about right now? Is that kind of the feeling in Lions country, that they're on the cusp of something?
Yeah, that is the feeling, and I have to tell you, it's a little strange because you know, obviously there's been some lean times here, you know, over the past few decades, and especially with going from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. Green Bay has kind of been the elite team in this division for a long time, but with Rodgers headed out of the division, Chicago is still kind of building, and then look, Minnesota won 13 games last year, but I think they were 11-0 in one-score games, and that's really hard to duplicate. Yeah, I think you look at the division, and it is the Lions. I think you know, they return a top 5 offense. They've made significant improvements to the defense. They've got 5 picks in the top 81 in this draft, including 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and then. Again, what they did in free agency, just improving their biggest need, which was to improve the defense. I think you look at this team and you're like, wow, Detroit's in a pretty good position to compete and potentially win the NFC North in 2023.
Tim, we'll get into, you know, looking forward, but I have to do one look back because there's something that happened last year that still to this day absolutely befuddles me, and that was the trade of T.J. Hockenson to the division rival Minnesota Vikings. Why did they do that? Do they regret doing that? Because I feel like you drop him into this offense with Jameson Williams now and obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown. It just feels like he's a very good player. And the whole thing kind of stunned me from afar. Give us the up close. Why did that happen, and what's kind of the thought on that move now?
Yeah, you know, at the time, obviously they were struggling. They had gotten off to the 1-6 start.
Right.
But the interesting thing about that is the Detroit Lions set a franchise record with touchdowns by the tight end position last season, and T.J. Hockenson accounted for 3 of those.
Okay.
And they had 12 in total without him. I just think they wanted to feature more of Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, and obviously Jameson Williams this year. They're a run-first football team, and they really value the play action, and they just thought that Ben Johnson can get a lot out of the tight ends with scheme, not so much with having an elite caliber tight end who is going to be up for a significant pay raise here in the next year. So I think that was really the thought behind it. Was just they liked some of the guys that they had behind them, and Brock Wright. They drafted James Houston last year. They really like where he's headed, and they just thought, hey, you know, we can get an asset, which turned out to be a second-round pick.
Yep.
We can turn that into a bigger need, and it was a team that still got 12 touchdowns from the tight end position, was a top 5 offense without T.J. Hockenson.
Yeah.
You mentioned Jameson Williams there, and you mentioned the fact that you have 2 first-round picks. Kind of feels like you got 3, right, with him?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
I remember
it totally does.
Go ahead, hit it. Go ahead, Tim.
No, go ahead, ask your question.
Well, I was just going to say, because I, you know, we saw him in little windows here and there last year.
He had 2 touches.
Certainly covered him and he was dynamic in the ones you saw. Certainly when I was around him when he was at Ohio State, it was a situation where, like, I remember hearing the whispers about him, and it was like, look, these guys are all pretty good, but this one might have the highest ceiling of all of them. Are those whispers there with Jameson Williams in terms of what he can be in really his first full season?
They are really, really, really excited about Jameson Williams around here, guys. Yeah, I had Ben Johnson on my podcast, the offensive coordinator, and he said you can list the guys in the league on one hand that are as dynamic and as Jameson Williams is. I mean, guys like Hill, you know, guys that no matter where you get the ball to them, they can take it to the house 80 yards. That's what this Lions team thinks Jameson Williams can do for them. You saw it in flashes. Obviously, the one touchdown on his first catch, the one run. But for an entire season, he just has elite speed. I mean, I asked him after the Lions drafted him what he would have ran at the combine had he done it. And he was completely serious. He said, I would have broken that record. And he was dead serious. I mean, that's the kind of speed that you're getting. You talk to Jared Goff and some people that saw him play with him right at the end of the year when he came back, and they said it's different. That speed, that explosiveness is way different than Jared said he's ever seen and played with. So there's some excitement here certainly about what he's going to do now that he's going to be a very big key featured piece in this offense in 2023.
Yeah, talking with Tim Twentyman about what we think is a very exciting Lions team. Let's stay on the offense. Jared Goff last year, 65% completions, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks. You feel like he can get into the 30s this year in touchdowns, 4,438 yards. Played well. Is Goff the guy? Would you expect one of those first-round picks, one of the two, to be used on a quarterback? You know, somebody maybe like an Anthony Richardson who needs some time to develop, or are they locked in with Jared Goff?
I think they're locked in with Jared Goff. I mean, you look at Goff, you mentioned the numbers from last year. Let's not forget he's 28 years old.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're talking about, mid-30s, a 33, 34-year-old quarterback. Jared Goff is 28 years old. He's also under contract for 2 more years at a very reasonable price considering what quarterbacks are going for now. The Detroit Lions are paying Jared Goff $30 million for a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback in terms of the numbers he put up last year, and they expect those to be even better, like you mentioned, this year. So now I think back at quarterback job, they need to shore up. Obviously, the reports with the offer into Teddy Bridgewater, he's got to decide what he wants to do. They have Nate Sudfeld as the backup. He was the backup last year, but Nate's played in only 6 games. He's attempted 37 passes in his career. So, maybe getting a guy like a Bridgewater that has more experience as a backup. But if not, get a developmental guy. I would be really surprised if it was at 6 in 18. I think kind of what we're talking about here about this team being close, the goals to win the division. I think getting an impact player at 6, getting an impact player at 18 probably makes more sense to kind of take that next step. But I think certainly with one of those 2 second-round picks, with a 3rd-round pick, a guy like Hendon Hooker,
sure,
if he's there, get a developmental guy who you like and you can kind of groom for the future. But they're certainly not looking for a starting caliber quarterback. Jared Goff is their guy. They've made that very clear.
All right, last one for me on the offensive side of the ball. You look at the free agent signings and the losses, net, huge positives for this organization. Offensively, you lose DJ Chark, but you're replacing him with Williams, basically, and then also Marvin Jones comes in on a 1-year deal. And then the running back. I think that, you look at Jamal Williams' season last year, 1,066 yards, 17 touchdowns. Felt kind of improbable that those would be the numbers when you started the year, but that's where he ended up. Also felt like very much kind of the heart and soul of this team in many ways, a leader from the offseason, the start on Hard Knocks, and obviously the fiery speech he gave after they went to Green Bay and knocked the Packers out of the playoffs in Lambeau. He's gone, but in comes probably a more talented, if we're being apples to apples, David Montgomery. What did you make of that move at running back and Williams, and how big is that loss, not only on the field, but in the locker room?
Yeah, it is a big loss, on the field, both because of the numbers that you mentioned, the touchdown production, but off the field. Like he was, he was a really good locker room guy. He was a favorite among the players. And look, the Lions wanted to sign him back. They made a contract offer to him. Williams didn't accept the first one, wanted to see what he could get, and by that point the Lions said, hey, we don't want to get stuck with nothing, made the offer to Montgomery and moved on. And look, you are talking about a player, Montgomery, who's 2 years younger than Williams, a guy who is probably a little bit better of a pass protector, a little bit better of a runner, not as physical as Williams, not so much a between the tackles,
more
1 yard
dangerous.
line, you're going to give him the ball, he's going to plow it in, but he's much more dangerous, especially in the pass game.
Yep.
That was not one of Williams' strengths. It was DeAndre Swift always in the game in passing situations. So, now you've got a guy who I think is younger, a little bit more dynamic. You're paid the same price that you offered Williams. So, I think you made out in there, and he's going to be running behind arguably one of the top 2-3 offensive lines in football. So I think you have a chance to be potentially even better on the ground. And this was a team that threw for 4,000 yards and rushed for at least 2,000 yards for the first time in franchise history last year.
Is DeAndre Swift kind of the next, I know it's for different ways, but, kind of the next Javid Best in terms of a Lion running back he thought was going to be this unbelievable dual threat, and it just never really came to be? I thought, last year, you remember in Hard Knocks, they're talking about him going for 1,000 and 1,000 Roger Craig style, and it just never seemed to materialize. Incredibly effective. He averaged 5.5 yards a carry. I know from a fantasy standpoint, people wanted more of him, but it just feels like for whatever reason there isn't that commitment to him internally.
Well, availability is the best ability, right, guys?
That's right.
And that's really been the story with Swift. I mean, you look at the week 1, he rushes for 144 yards, has that great game, but injures his ankle. And he was never really the same. And then week 3, he injures his shoulder, missed a chunk of time, was playing with that stuff, was limited, and really wasn't until the end of the year that he was healthy again. And that's really been the story of DeAndre Swift through his first 3 years. Dynamic player. Again, a guy, you just see some of the highlights where he catches the pass, falls on his butt, gets up, cuts it back, has a touchdown, some of the long runs and big plays. A dynamic player, but it seems like he's kind of always dealing with something. And that's been the biggest issue. Games missed and just being limited by injury. I'd love to see him for 17 games healthy. Oh, look, no player is ever healthy by mid-season, end of the season.
Sure.
But just be that guy that's available, that can have 15 to 20 touches, because he's such a dynamic player. But again, it's the whole availability thing, and that's really been his Achilles heel for his first 3 seasons.
Tim, what are they? You look at this roster. There's a lot of talent. You mentioned in free agency how active they were. We've talked a lot about their offense and the talent there. By the way, 2 first-round picks. What would make Lions fans most happy at 6 and 18?
Well, I think at 6, you've got to look at the best defensive player available, whether that's Jalen Carter and you vetted that and you feel comfortable about him, whether that's Will Anderson Jr. if he somehow falls, Tyree Wilson, whatever that best defensive player on your board is at 6. I think Lions fans will be ecstatic about that. This is a defense that needs to be better. Now, they obviously address the secondary a lot in free agency, re-signed some guys up front, Isaiah Buggs, John Kaminsky. But they were just an average defense last year. I mean, we're talking about a playoff team and possibly a team that could have done some damage in the playoffs. And so they knew they had to address that side of the football. I think they come away at pick 6 with a guy that they can maybe pair up front with Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston and some of those young players that they really like up front. And then at number 18, I just think you're in a position then to just best available player, whether that's Bijan Robinson, whether that's one of the offensive linemen, whether that's a receiver to add to that group, or whoever it is, a tight end, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's your best defensive player at 6, a guy that can come in and make an impact on that side of the ball, and then that really opens you up at 18 to just take who's the top guy on my board. Let's take him, and then we're off and running.
Yeah, because you really did a great job, or the Lions did, addressing kind of their defensive backfield, right? You had Cam Sutton was kind of their big early move. Emmanuel Mosley's a guy who's played, when he's available, has played at a high level for the 49ers, certainly. And then probably from a dollar standpoint, one of the steals of free agency that nobody really saw coming, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, 1 year $8 million. That's a huge guy. Led the league in interceptions last year. How do they feel about what they've done on the back end of this defense? And then now you're talking about getting another game wrecker up front to go with Aiden Hutchinson, and then it feels like this could be a pretty talented team.
Yeah, then you're off and running. Like I said, they love being able to pick up those guys. I mean, like you said, they identified Cam Sutton, really a guy that can play the nickel and outside. Mosley, really physical brand of football, a starter in San Francisco. I think he was available because he's coming off the ACL, but he's expected to be ready by the regular season. And then Mosley's a guy that can play safety and can play nickel. So what they did was they added veteran guys with experience, with production, that are versatile and can do a lot of different things. And so I agree. Now you just help marriage help put together that the marriage between the rush and the cover. I think you address the cover part of it. You like where some of the rush is coming. Obviously, James Houston, the way he finished the season with 8 sacks there. Aiden Hutchinson was the runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. They've got some other young guys up front they really like. But you add one more guy, maybe a difference maker up front, and now you got the cover part taken care of. You got the rush part taken care of. I think your defense can take a big leap forward. We've already talked about the offense from last year and what we expect that to be. You improve that defense, you become a top 15 defense in this league with a top 5 offense. I think the NFC North is very much in reach, and this is a football team I don't think a lot of people want to play.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure nobody's sad about Aaron Rodgers seemingly departing the division for the first time in obviously a long time. My final one, wanted to ask you about Dan Campbell, because it was just such a compelling thing to watch him and Aaron Glenn and Deuce Staley and all of them, but especially Dan Campbell and the leadership style that he had, that, man, getting guys to run through a wall, man, and all of that. And it worked. And they played well, and they battled through adversity. You mentioned that slow start. What's kind of the take on Campbell, and is this something that you think can work long term? It certainly would seem that way, and certainly very likable guy from the outside.
Yeah, he is very likable. Look, he's a player's coach. And I just look at Week 18 last year, right, guys? I mean, the Lions, devastating that you're not going to be in the playoffs, right?
Yep.
I mean, the Rams lose that game, Seattle wins it. You've got nothing to play for besides pride. And we've seen many times over the years that the discouragement of that maybe gets the better of you. You don't have your best performance, but to go on the road with Green Bay needing a win to get in, they have everything to play for, and you play a physical brand of football and beat them in their place, and play the way that they did. I think that tells you a lot about Dan Campbell and what these players think of Dan Campbell and how they want to play for Dan Campbell. Look, he's a player himself. He's not going to ask anybody to do anything, one, he hasn't done already, or two, been asked to do himself. And so he's very honest with players. He's open with players. He tells it like it is. And I think players respect that. And then he's got their best interest in mind. And so, look, he's fiery. He's all about ball. And I think just players love playing for a guy like that, who is very, very genuine, very hard-nosed, and just wants to win and wants to do the best for his players. These guys love him, and I can see a guy like that, and I can see that playing for a long time in Detroit, a city like you guys know, like where you're at in Cleveland, hard-nosed, lunch pail, right? That kind of mentality, I think that plays in Detroit just like it does in Cleveland. So I think it certainly plays here and can play for a long time. But look, as you guys know, you got to win football games. Head coaches and quarterbacks are defined by wins. So it all sounds great, and it was great on Hard Knocks and everything else. But at the end of the day, you've got to win football games, and the Lions think they're going to start doing that with Dan Campbell.
Yeah, certainly should be a fun year. Great stuff, Tim. Really appreciate your time.
All right, guys, anytime.
All right, that's Tim Twentyman, Lions senior writer and insider host of the 20-Min in the Huddle podcast. He joined on the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. We have the categories on the Lions coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Being a victim of medical malpractice.
Cleveland Browns Daily brought to you by Ballybet. Coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
And be part of one of the most passionate fans.
You're up, Zeke.
Brown season ticket member wait list today for the best chance of securing tickets for all home games in future seasons. Don't miss out. Go to clevelandbrowns.com/tickets or call 440-891-5050 to reserve your spot today. Before we get to the categories, and Nick, if you would, a little bit of traveling music once we get to that point. This feels a little bit how, we've felt a couple of times in the last 4 or 5 years. Like it was our time to ascend.
Totally.
After struggling, you check all the boxes and you go, gosh, you got all this stuff. It's one thing to have it all lined up. It's another thing to actually do it. And the Lions are at do-it stage right now. The only thing standing in front of them is kind of an aging Vikings roster. The Bears don't feel like they're there yet, to me, not at all. And the Packers could be completely rebuilding without Rodgers. So it's there for them on a silver platter.
100%. It feels in many ways a lot like we felt, coming into 2019, coming off of 2018.
Yep.
And, that didn't work out well for us. It's hard to be the hyped team and deliver. That's what they're going to be faced with. And I think that they will be up for the challenge because of what's going on in their division. But nonetheless, you got to get it done. That's the bottom line. You've got to go out there now and deliver.
Yep.
So they're going to be a team that is predicted for the first time in a long time to win their division. Probably the first time in decades, I would say.
I was trying to think, when's the last time they would have been predicted to win the division? Would it have been like coming out of the year they played in the NFC Championship, like 91 or 2? Before Favre was
because I don't even think with Stafford when they went to the playoffs that next year, that still would have been Rodgers would have still been predicted to win the division. Yeah,
it would have been Favre, Rodgers. Yeah. There may have been some Bears teams in there because the Bears played for a Super Bowl. The one time they had some really good defenses and Rex Grossman, but it would have always been a Packers predicted to win or Vikings even.
Okay, so they are the betting favorites to win the NFC North. The last time that they won the NFC North was 1991.
So nailed that, Eric Kramer.
Yep. Nobody seems to be saying the last time that they were favored to win the division was. I don't see that anywhere.
At best, it's 92.
Yep.
I feel very confident with that.
Yep.
There's no scenario when the Packers had a fully formed Favre or Rodgers that they would have been predicted to finish ahead of them. And in the odd chance that the Packers weren't favored, it would have been the Vikings, who've had some really good teams with Adrian Peterson, or the team with some of those Randy Moss, Chris Carter teams.
Yep.
And then the Bears' defense would have been good enough that they would have been favored ahead of them.
Yep.
So, no, I think it's probably – you probably go back to 92, the last time that they were favored to do something. So it's one thing to be talked about. It's another thing to actually do it. And they're in the do-it stage.
Here's a wild stat, too, is that they were favored in Week 2 this year against Washington Commanders, and that was the first time that they had been favored just in a game, let alone favored to win their division in over 20 games. They were last favored to win a game in the middle of the 2020 season. So
they've bottomed out several times.
They've come a long way quickly.
They did, yeah. But they're in look, they kind of crushed the Stafford trade.
Yeah.
Lots of ones. It's kind of a win-win. The Rams won. They won the Super Bowl right away.
Totally.
And the Lions won, too. They got a franchise quarterback on a much cheaper deal, and they were able to recoup a bunch of draft picks, and they're still doing it. They got 2 wins this year because of that deal. They could get a franchise cornerstone defender to add with Hutchinson on the defensive side. I mean, dude, I was just thinking about this. Like, if Jackson Smith and Jigba falls, and you're able to put him in this, they would have Amon St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Jackson Smith, and Jigba at receiver. Be ridiculous.
Would you, as somebody who's watched him more, is Jackson Smith and Jigba, because that's like the comp I see for him is Amon St. Brown. Are they redundant in terms of what they do?
I think Smith and Jigba is a higher ceiling of it.
Yeah.
I mean, Heartline rated him the second best receiver that he's coached at Ohio State behind Marvin Harrison Jr. and then him.
And even so,
I think he's more of a complete receiver than he's given credit.
He can play more outside.
Yeah, I think he played mostly in the slot because Wilson and Olave were on the outside. The way Ohio State did that from a hierarchy was go in the slot, earn your keep, and then we put you outside. Like they did that even with Harrison.
Yeah.
They were going to do that with Harrison this year. Like he was going to start in the slot. It was going to be Smith and Jigba outside, Harrison in the slot, Ibuka outside, and then all of that changed with the injuries. But no, I think he's more than capable of being outside.
Well, even if
he's
you had
precise a route runner as you'll find.
Jamison Williams on one side and Smith and Jigba on the other with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think you're going to be just fine.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a lot of weapons to deal with. All right,
Yeah.
let's hit the categories on the lines. And let's start with the uniforms. Keep, change, or what variation?
I like their uniforms. I like the blue. I mean, I think
Honolulu blue.
I think if we were going to go, nitpicky, I'd like to see some of the, the older ones, that older helmet maybe. But
Yeah.
I think they're pretty good.
So they are getting new uniforms. They are one of the teams that's going to get new uniforms. It's not this year. I think it might be next year. These aren't that old. And I'm with you. I think these were a pretty good version of where they had a little bit of mix of modern with their historic uniforms.
Yep.
They were coming off of some kind of crazy ones they had sometimes with Stafford, that they had some black. They had an all-blue uniform in it.
I liked
At
when
one
they had the
point.
black one. Of course I like that.
I know you do.
I had a black Calvin Johnson. So it
Yeah,
says that they will
blue
not.
with that black is always going to be clean.
They will not have new uniforms in 2023, according to their team president. People get over their skis on that, but they will have a new helmet, a new alternate
there you
helmet. New uniforms coming probably 2024.
There you go. Yeah, I think the ones they have are fine. The new helmet. I mean, they've always had a silver helmet, haven't they?
Yep.
Have they ever worn anything other than a silver helmet?
They had like the full silver originally.
Yeah, there's the old Well, remember the logo we saw on Hard Knocks? Do that one.
Oh man, that logo's so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But they had the Barry Sanders one where they wore the bright blue with just the silver helmets, on a Thanksgiving Day, the 75th. That thing's unbelievable.
yeah, I like the line on the helmet though. I do enjoy that.
Me too.
I kind of like. I mean, to me, their uniforms now are a modern take on what it used to be, which are
Yeah.
excellent. And I do think that their black variation, because the black and that blue are so good together, that they should always keep a black. They went to the silver one. I think they should always keep a black one in the mix, because those black ones were just so good.
Yeah, the black with black, silver, and that bright blue always works.
So I'm looking at one right now where Calvin Johnson had the silver lid. It had a black face mask. He had a black jersey with blue numerals outlined in silver and white. They had silver pants
I know
with
it.
blue and white striping that's outlined in a black, and then the black socks. Like that one right there, that needs to be in the rotation. Like, it doesn't have to be the
that's
number
good.
one. It doesn't have to be a classic, but that has to be in the rotation always.
Yeah,
It's
as a
too good.
one-off, it's pretty good.
It's too good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what alternate.
Yeah,
what could
that
they
Calvin
do with
Johnson,
the
I had
alternate
that one.
helmet?
That is such a good uniform. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's not all black,
looking
just
at-
the jersey's black.
No. I'm looking at some of their alternate helmet stuff, and there's not a whole lot you can do unless you go blue.
Blue. Yeah, which
It seems to be kind of what you see. I mean, they have different varying degrees of silver. Like they have a almost like a chrome.
do they have a
silver?
black with the blue?
Yeah, it's not much.
Yeah, I see a black with
They
the lion is also black,
Yeah,
but just
the-
outlined in blue.
It's outlined in blue.
That one's
They've
pretty
got
sweet.
a chromey, a really chrome
Yeah,
one that they wore a couple of times.
the black
Well,
looks.
yeah, it's pretty much unchanged. I mean, it's a silver with that prancing lion, which is such a great look.
so good. Yeah,
I
the
think
blue
these are
doesn't
great
look good.
Uniforms.
They
No,
are.
no.
They're excellent uniforms.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that, because they haven't won, if you're redoing a franchise, who wouldn't want to be Lions? Who wouldn't want to
Yep.
wear blue and silver? It's a win. It's just that
Yep.
they haven't won much.
Like, I'm even
Ford
looking at
Field.
this black
Go ahead,
one,
go ahead.
and I like
Yeah.
it, but it looks so much like the Carolina Panthers blacks. Their black
does.
helmets.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
just
no,
keep the
there's not-
silver. I think you put the black face mask on the silver when you wear that black jersey. That's pretty much all you need from an alternate standpoint. I keep seeing this white one here that's got a black lion outlined in blue. I think
Yeah.
it's good. What they've got's good. It's just good.
There is here's a good one. It's the one where they have that throwback mascot on it. silver one with the throwback lion mascot.
Where there's no,
It's pretty
like,
good.
you don't see his arms, like where there's no
Yeah.
interior highlighting of the line.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't
Okay.
know. We'll see, but I think it's a good look. Ford Field. I've never been to Ford Field.
What?
No.
Oh man,
Never
I've been a
been.
bunch
I've
of times.
never had a
I
cause.
saw WrestleMania 23 there. That was also the home of the preseason game where Freddie called the plays for Baker,
Yep.
which led to that whole
The
scenario.
infamous, aha, Freddie called plays.
That's right. And then
One of the great moments in CBD history.
oh baby, and then we were there for the Bills game this year.
Yeah. So you guys have been there a lot. What
Yep.
do you think?
Solid stadium, very good.
Yeah.
The brick on the inside, the one side's got the brick. It's cool. It's a very nice dome. Is it one of the best domes in the league? No, but very nice dome. And I think the brick on the interior of it makes it look really cool and unique.
It's an example of when you build a dome, the things that come with it. So since building that place,
Yep.
Super Bowls,
Yep.
WrestleManias,
Yep.
Final Fours,
Yep.
MAC championship games. I can't believe they haven't hosted a Big Ten championship game at this point, but they will. They're going to host college football playoff games once it goes to a 12-team playoff. This is put a roof on it, and this is what happens.
That's right. And
You get
our
all these things.
our downtown is way nicer than Detroit's.
Yeah. I haven't been to Detroit in probably 10 years, I think.
Not
since I've
sure
been
you're
up
missing much, brother.
Went there to we went there we did like a MGM Grand. Went there one night. Did a little, this was like a decade ago. Went there on like a date night one time. Just drove up and went. It was fine. We stayed at the MGM Grand, kind of hung around right there. Road trip to Detroit.
Yeah, I can't say there's anything that's a must-do except maybe hopping across the border into Windsor.
Yeah, Windsor's kind of. I remember doing that actually too. We did one
Yeah.
night there. Maybe that's what we did. I can't remember, but I do remember the Windsor side of it as well, going across the bridge. That used to be something that was very easy, and now I don't know
Not.
if it's still that way or not.
Yeah, not as
but
easy, I don't
probably
believe.
not. Yeah, it's fine. It's nothing that you need to write home about.
Yep.
Must do thing on a road trip to Detroit. Is there anything you do? Nothing, right? It's just a city.
Windsor.
Yeah. Player you want from their current roster.
Ooh. So, I think there are two answers here. And I think I'm going to go Aiden Hutchinson. I'm tempted to take Jamison Williams, but Aiden Hutchinson's a stud. If we just say we're rolling Aiden Hutchinson and Myles Garrett out there every week, I feel like that'd be a great thing for us.
Yeah. That would be a pretty great thing. Jamison Williams would be a pretty great thing. I mean, both of those would be just high end. Just high end. I think Williams is going to explode.
So would you take him or would you take Aiden Hutchinson?
I
You can
would
only
take
one.
Williams because I got to be honest
Weapons.
with what I am, which is weapons.
Yep.
So, like, I would want him. You put him opposite Amari and DPJ.
And Elijah.
Amari and Elijah in the mix as well. I mean, Deshaun throwing bombs over Baghdad to Jamison Williams excites me a great deal. I mean, I don't know that he can have. I think I don't know if he'll have this type of impact, but I think from an athletic profile standpoint, he's probably most similar to Jamar Chase.
Okay.
In terms of just an explosive athlete. So if he can stay healthy and you put him on with a quarterback who can sling it, I think he could have that type of impact.
All right.
On the roster.
I think if
So
he had
yeah,
played
it's
last year and
fun.
been decent, I would take him over
Yeah,
Aiden
it's fair.
Hutchinson too. Hutchinson just
Hutchinson's a smart pick. If you
Stud.
go Garrett Hutchinson for the next 5 to 10, you're locked in.
yeah, you're feeling pretty good. And I think he's also
very,
he would
very good.
fit. I think he would fit Cleveland very well.
He would. Yeah. Yep. All-time favorite Lion,
Megatron.
Barry. Probably you could make an argument the two most. I mean, I think Barry Sanders is the most freakish running back we've ever had and played largely in obscurity. They had a couple of playoff teams. Calvin Johnson's maybe the most dominant physical player we've ever had play receiver
Yeah.
and played entirely in obscurity.
Yeah. And I would
And
add
quit
another.
because both of them quit early.
I'd add another one who had a 4-year stretch that was just incredible. Was Herman Moore. Herman Moore for 4 years was, and from 94 to 97 was as good as anybody.
Who was the receiver opposite him?
Wasn't it a Perriman?
Brett Perriman. Was it Brett Perriman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Towards the end of Barry, and they were transitioning from Kramer to Scott Mitchell. Barry had like a 2,000-yard season in there.
Yep.
Barry's one of those guys, and Barry kind of disappeared after his playing career. Like if I show like my kids video of Barry Sanders like on YouTube, you're like, oh
man,
that's how he did it. Yeah.
Herman Moore in 1995, by the way. So Herman Moore had 3 first-team All-Pros in a row.
Yeah.
95.
Did he really?
Yeah. 95, 96,
Wow.
97, first-team All-Pro. Led the league in catches 2 of those years. In 95, 123 catches, 686 yards, and 14 touchdowns. Like in 1995.
That's crazy.
Those are bonkers numbers.
Yeah. Playoff team. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should be.
Absolutely.
We've gone over some of the biggest off-season additions, and in the draft, we talked about this. They can go a lot of ways right at the top. They can go, I think, obviously, to Tim's point, they would go defense at 6, and then whatever falls to them at 16 or 18.
Yeah,
Whatever
they're a fun
falls.
team. They're
They are.
going to be a very, very fun team to watch this year. Ben Johnson did a great job with their offense. Aaron Glenn, our good friend of ours and former Browns cornerback coach back under Mike Pettin, has done a great job as a defensive coordinator. They're going to be fun. Last year they were the number 5 offense in scoring. They were 28th in scoring defense. I mean, and to Tim Twentyman's point earlier, if they can just get to the average, they're going to be tough.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to be a better offense this year. I mean, you're subbing Jamison Williams for DJ Chark. I mean, that's
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. They basically have 3 first-round picks is the way that this is going to play out, because Williams, it was just these flashes, and that's about it. Fun team to watch. I'm thrilled for them. From our days hosting DLD,
Yeah.
That's a fan base that
Bring it on
deserves
back.
it.
Motor City.
To save the Leafs. Bring it back, baby. All right, coming up next, we'll take a look into the association. We know the Cavs matchup, and also I don't know that the West I don't know that anything in the first round has been as good as what the West could be this year. We'll get into that coming up next briefly. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Getting engaged?
on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Cavs in the postseason.
You're up, Zeke.
So, as the 4 seed against the Knicks without Julius Randle, Cavs a heavy favorite, as they should be, to win that first round. And I think that's kind of the minimum expectation now for them, especially without Randle, that you get to that second round. It would be a matchup with Milwaukee, most likely than not, if they get there. Here's what I'm not sure most people realize, and I kind of had some awareness of it because obviously the Cavs were in this game last year. But 7 through 10 is playing in the NBA.
Yep.
So what that means is 7 will play 8. So in my head, for some reason I thought 7 played 10, but 7 will play 8 in what amounts to a single elimination or a double elimination between those two teams. The winner will be the 7.
Yep.
The 8 will then have to play the winner of 9-10 to be the 8.
Yep.
So that's the setup.
Yep.
So just for perspective, in the Western Conference, this is where you stand. The Lakers are playing the Timberwolves in a play-in game on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock. The winner's the 7 seed. They would host Memphis. Can you imagine the Lakers against Ja Morant?
Give it to me.
AD and LeBron against Ja Morant in the first round. The loser there would be Minnesota. If Minnesota loses, they play the winner of the Pelicans or the Thunder for the 8. But the Western Conference playoffs, Denver versus whatever that amalgamation would be, provided the Lakers win. Memphis, L.A.,
Yep.
Sacramento, Golden State,
Yep.
and the 4-5 is the Suns and the Clippers.
Yeah. It's a lot of star power. Who do the Suns have? How are the Suns the 3 seed?
Kevin Durant.
Not the Suns.
They're the
I'm
4
sorry.
seed.
I'm sorry. I misspoke. The Kings.
The Kings have De'Aaron Fox, and then they've got Sabonis' kid.
Oh, yeah. Former
Yeah.
Pacer. We saw him in Indiana.
Yeah, they've slowly just built up. I mean, it's not like it's just been a
They're just
slow
solid.
build for them.
They're just solid.
They have not played a game on ABC since 2002.
And they're the 3
Will
seed.
play- And they're the 3 seed, and they're
Wow.
heavily underdogs to the Warriors in that. But I can't recall a first round in East or West that good.
Yeah.
Suns Clippers is a first round. That feels like a Western final
Yeah.
if it plays out that way. Lakers against Morant and then Warriors against Kings. That's really, really strong.
I mean, in the first
that
round,
side.
you're going to have Chris Paul, Booker, Durant, and Ayton against Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. That's a first-round match.
Well, George will miss the first round,
Well, then they're losing.
so they're probably losing. So it'll be Kawhi and then everything else. But the Clippers are frisky, even without George. They're frisky, but it'd be hard pressed to imagine them
they're
beating
not beating the
Suns.
Suns.
Yeah.
The
yeah.
Suns, I mean, really, on paper, the Suns should probably be the 1, right?
Yeah. A lot of fire. I think they've only lost once with Durant. The Lakers, this will be the first time LeBron will play in front of a full house in the postseason since he's been with the Lakers, because they won it in
the bubble.
The bubble, and then 2021 it was 8,500 fans because of COVID still.
Wow.
In California. So this will be the first time he's played in front of a full house in Los Angeles when they host on Tuesday night. In the East,
2 minutes.
in the East, Bucks are the 1, Celtics the 2. Celtics will play it's going to be Celtics Heat, which would be really good.
Yep.
Sixers will play Brooklyn, so that's the 3-6.
They're heavily
And then Cavs and
favored.
Knicks is a 4.
Heavily favored over Brooklyn.
Yeah. They should be. It's a really good first round, both sides.
Yeah. Second round in the East is going to be really good, and the whole West tournament is going to be great, every round.
All the way through. If the star power plays out, if you're a television executive and the star power plays out and you get Warriors-Lakers in the second round and then Nuggets and Suns in the second round.
Yeah. Pretty good. And then in the East, you're going to
Bonanza.
get Celtics, Sixers, and
Yep.
Bucks, Cavs.
Yeah, which will be absolutely bonanza.
Yeah.
Feels like there's a really good chance, and I think deservedly so, Donovan Mitchell will be a first-team All-NBA.
1 minute. 1 minute.
First, he will be just the third Cavalier ever. LeBron James is 1. Do you know who the other one is? LeBron James was first-team All-NBA, I don't know, 85 times, but
Right.
there's one other Cav who is it once.
I'm going to guess Mark Price.
Got it.
Let's go.
1993. Good job out of you. Mark Price was first-team All-NBA in 1993.
All right.
30.
To be the year after Magic. Magic's out.
Yep.
So it had to be him and Jordan had to be the backcourt on the first team All NBA
Yeah.
in '93.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job out of you.
Well, thank you.
All right, we're back tomorrow for more fun. The next level is coming up next. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.